Your ability to focus is not a psychological problem. It's a chemical one. And the truth is that your brain is not failing you. It's following a biological program that was written long before your life became filled with screens, notifications, distractions, and endless demands. You think you can force focus through willpower, but willpower is the weakest tool you have. Focus begins much deeper, in the layers of your nervous system that decide what deserves your energy and what doesn't. Before you understand how to rewire your brain for deep focus, you must understand why your mind resists it, why concentration feels painful, why your attention slips away even when you want it more than anything, and why your brain prefers easy distraction instead of meaningful work. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're not incapable. Your brain is simply reacting to chemistry. There is a molecule in your brain that decides when you should stay alert, when you should pay attention, when something matters enough to focus on it, and when your mind should drift away. That molecule is epinephrine, also known as adrenaline. Most people think adrenaline only appears in moments of danger or excitement, but this molecule is present every time your brain decides to stay engaged with something hard. It is the fuel that drives focus. Without it, your mind slides into distraction. With too much of it, your mind becomes chaotic. Focus exists in a narrow window of chemical balance, and most people today live far outside that window. The world you live in constantly pulls your brain away from that balance. Notifications spike adrenaline just enough to create a rapid shift in attention, but not enough to sustain deep engagement. Social media offers microscopic hits of stimulation that activate dopamine, not focus. Multitasking floods your brain with noise and uncertainty, which interrupts the chemical stability needed for deep thinking. Your brain was never meant to jump between 20 tasks in a minute, and every time you split your attention, your brain must spend chemical resources to bring you back into focus, resources that eventually run out. Your struggle to focus is not a failure of discipline. It is a depletion of neurochemistry. The second molecule responsible for focus is acetylcholine. If adrenaline is the energy that drives concentration, acetylcholine is the spotlight. It acts like a lens inside your brain, narrowing your attention, sharpening your perception, and helping you lock onto a single task with clarity. When you're deeply focused, acetylcholine levels rise in specific circuits, helping your brain encode information, learn new skills, and block out irrelevant noise. But when your environment is full of distractions, acetylcholine becomes scattered across too many things, weakening your ability to focus on the one thing that matters. And then there is dopamine. Not the dopamine from pleasure or reward, but dopamine as the motivator of focus. Without dopamine, starting feels impossible. Continuing feels heavy. Finishing feels unrealistic. Dopamine signals your brain that something is worth the effort, even if it's difficult. But when dopamine is constantly hijacked by easy stimulation, your brain learns to save effort for things that give fast reward. Deep work becomes chemically undervalued, while quick distractions become chemically amplified. Your brain is fighting an unfair battle against a world designed to steal the very chemicals you need to concentrate. Every time you check your phone while working, your brain experiences a chemical shift. The switch may be tiny, but it's enough to break the delicate balance of adrenaline, acetylcholine, and dopamine that supports focus. Each switch forces your brain to restart the process of stabilizing these chemicals, and this restart takes time, not seconds, minutes. Most people never stay focused long enough for their brain to complete the chemical transition into deep concentration. They live in a perpetual state of almost focused, always trying, never entering the zone where real progress happens. But here is the good news. Your ability to focus can be rebuilt. Focus is not a personality trait. It is not a natural gift. It is the outcome of a chemical state, and chemical states can be trained, shaped, and strengthened. You can rewire your brain for deep focus, not through force, but through understanding. Once you understand the biological script that drives your attention, you can adjust your environment and habits to support the chemistry of focus instead of fighting against it. And the very first step, the simplest, most immediate step, is to reduce the noise your brain must filter. Focus doesn't start with effort. It starts with clarity. And clarity is impossible when your brain is flooded with micro-distractions. Every notification you receive, pulls a small amount of adrenaline. Every app switch destabilizes your asset. Every moment of boredom that leads you to scroll trains your dopamine to chase easy stimulation. If you want deep focus, you must give your brain a moment to prepare for it. Even 30 seconds of stillness before starting a task can create a shift in your chemical baseline. Your breath slows, your adrenaline stabilizes. Your dopamine begins to rise in anticipation. Your brain starts recognizing that something meaningful is about to happen. That's the first micro-solution. Pause. Not to rest, but to prime your brain. A simple breath, a moment of stillness, a conscious intention can begin shaping the chemistry of focus before you even start working. The second micro-solution is friction, not the painful kind, the strategic kind. Deep focus requires reducing the number of choices your brain must process. Every time you decide whether to check something, switch something, or respond to something, your brain performs a chemical evaluation. That evaluation costs energy. When your environment is designed to minimize choices, your brain can direct more chemical resources toward concentration. Putting your phone in another room, closing unrelated tabs, clearing your desk, or even writing down the single task you want to focus on reduces cognitive friction. When friction decreases, perception of difficulty decreases. And when difficulty decreases, dopamine becomes available for focus instead of escaping to distractions. People underestimate how much their environment shapes their chemistry. Your brain is constantly reading signals from the world around you, adjusting your internal state to match what it believes you need to survive. When your environment is chaotic, your chemistry becomes chaotic. When your environment is simple, your chemistry becomes stable. Stability is the doorway to focus. The third micro-solution is beginning before you feel ready. Most people wait for motivation to appear, but motivation is a chemical response that comes after you start, not before. When you begin a task, even for 10 seconds, your brain releases a small amount of dopamine that says, "This matters." That small signal is enough to start shifting your chemistry into a state of engagement. You don't need to feel ready. You only need to begin. And beginning triggers the biological process that sustains focus. You've likely experienced this many times without realizing it. The first minute of a task feels heavy, uncomfortable, or distracting. But if you push past that initial friction, something changes. Your breathing shifts. Your attention narrows. Your thoughts become quieter. That shift is not psychological. It is the moment when adrenaline, acetylcholine, and dopamine align. Your brain moves from resistance into engagement. And if you stay with it a little longer, that engagement becomes immersion. Immersion is deep focus, and deep focus is a chemical event. What most people don't know is that deep focus is also the key to rewiring your brain. Neuroplasticity, the ability of your brain to change itself, only occurs when you combine high levels of focus with moments of high effort. When your brain senses that something matters and that you are pushing against resistance, it releases a complex mix of chemicals that tag the circuits you're using. These tags act like signals that tell your brain, strengthen this, remember to build peace. Without focus, plasticity does not occur. Without effort, focus does not create lasting change. The combination is the formula. This is why multitasking kills learning. This is why shallow work creates shallow results. This is why you can read something 10 times and not remember it, but struggle through something once and never forget it. The brain doesn't change through repetition. It changes through engaged effort. Focus is the entrance to transformation. And once you understand that, you begin to realize that your struggle with focus is not simply a productivity issue. It is a barrier between you and the version of yourself you want to become. Because the brain you live with tomorrow depends on the quality of your focus today. Every moment of deep engagement shapes your identity. Every moment of distraction prevents that. But now that you understand the chemistry, the next question becomes, how do you consistently access this state? Especially in a world that constantly pulls you away from it. How do you create a brain that naturally wants to focus instead of one that fights it? And the answer begins with understanding the hidden mechanism your brain uses to decide whether to engage or escape. Because there is a deeper reason your mind resists focus, and once you see it clearly, everything begins to change. Your brain does not decide to focus based on discipline. It decides based on perceived value. Every time you approach a task, your brain performs a rapid internal calculation. Is the reward worth the energy required? This calculation does not happen in your conscious mind. It happens in the deeper layers of your nervous system, where dopamine, acetylcholine, and adrenaline interact to determine whether an action deserves your attention. If the perceived reward is unclear, distant, or overshadowed by the temptation of easier stimulation, your brain tilts you toward distraction. Not because you lack character, but because your biology is trying to conserve energy. Your brain evolved in environments where energy was scarce. Survival depended on using resources wisely. This ancient programming still lives inside you. The problem is that your modern environment sends signals that confuse the system. When you scroll through social media, your brain sees rapid novelty, high stimulation, and instant reward. It interprets this as a high-value, low-energy activity. When you look at a difficult task, your brain sees uncertainty, effort, and delayed reward. It interprets this as a low-value, high-energy activity. Your brain doesn't understand deadlines or goals or ambition. It understands chemistry. The task may actually be meaningful, but the chemistry tells a different story, and chemistry wins. This is why people who constantly check their phone struggle to focus. Their dopamine system becomes trained to expect reward from quick, low-effort behaviors. Their adrenaline system becomes conditioned to respond to novelty instead of sustained attention. Their acetylcholine system becomes scattered across multiple sources of input. Focus is not just difficult, it becomes chemically unnatural. But here's the moment everything begins to shift. Your brain can be taught to perceive effort as rewarding. It can be trained to associate challenge with meaning. It can be rewired to release dopamine not when you escape difficulty, but when you lean into it. This shift changes everything. And the way you achieve this shift is through controlled friction. Not suffering, not extreme discipline, just strategic difficulty. Each time you choose to stay with a task for even a few seconds longer than your mind wants to, you are training your dopamine system to link effort with reward. Each time you resist the urge to check your phone, you are training your adrenaline system to stay stabilized instead of spiking. Each time you intentionally narrow your attention onto a single point, you strengthen the circuits that release acetylcholine in a focused pattern. The shift is subtle at first, but powerful over time. Focus becomes easier. Distraction becomes less appealing. Your brain begins to prefer depth over noise, and then something even more interesting happens. Your identity begins to change. People think identity is a story we tell ourselves, but identity is a reflection of repeated chemistry. When your brain experiences the state of focus regularly, it begins to predict that you are the kind of person who focuses. When your brain experiences the state of finishing tasks, it begins to predict that you are the kind of person who completes things. These predictions are not psychological affirmations. They are chemical expectations that shape your behavior. Your brain acts based on what it believes you are likely to do. When you shift your chemistry, you shift those beliefs. When you shift those beliefs, you shift your actions. And when your actions change, your identity follows. This means that deep focus is not just a skill. It is a path to becoming someone different. But the challenge is that most people never reach the threshold of chemistry needed to enter deep focus, because they never push through the initial discomfort. That discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. It is the natural transition between a distracted brain and a focused brain. It is the moment when your neurochemistry is recalibrating. If you avoid the discomfort, you never reach the state of clarity. If you push through it, your brain unlocks a level of function you may have forgotten you had. This moment of discomfort is where the aha moment of focus lives. It is the moment where your brain decides to switch from avoiding effort to embracing it. And here is the truth most people never hear. You only need to cross that threshold once per session. Once you enter focus, staying there is easier than getting there. This is why beginning is the hardest part. Your brain resists the chemical transition, but once the chemicals align, the resistance dissolves. The key is to understand how to reach this threshold consistently. The first method is narrowing your visual field. When you focus your eyes on a small point, your brain naturally increases acetylcholine release. Your mind follows your gaze. Narrow vision creates narrow attention. This is not metaphorical, it is biological. Your visual system is directly connected to your attention system. If you want mental focus, start with visual precision. Look at the page. Look at the screen. Look at the object. Let your gaze sharpen your mind. The second method is to embrace the first wave of resistance. When you start a task, your brain sends a signal of friction. This friction is just adrenaline rising. It feels like discomfort, but it is actually preparation. If you interpret this feeling as failure, you will quit. If you interpret this feeling as the beginning of focus, you will continue. Interpretation is the difference between distraction and deep work. The third method is rhythmic breathing, not meditation, not relaxation, just slow, intentional breathing for a few seconds. When you exhale slowly, your heart rate decreases and your adrenaline levels stabilize. This stabilization allows your brain to allocate chemical resources more efficiently. It is a reset button that prepares you for focus. Just 5 breaths can shift your internal state enough to begin. The fourth method is eliminating micro. Every time you switch tasks, even for a second, your brain must reset its neurochemical state. These resets destroy focus. When you want deep work, commit to a single lane. Close everything else. Even one unchecked tab can pull your brain out of alignment. Your mind is only as focused as your environment. The fifth method is the most powerful of all: intentional effort. Your brain releases the chemicals of neuroplasticity only when you struggle with something. Not when you coast, not when it's easy. When you push through resistance, your brain floods the circuits with neuromodulators that strengthen learning and deepen focus. This means that the very act of struggling is the key to rewiring your brain. The feeling you interpret as difficulty is actually the gateway to growth. And finally, there is the emotional layer. Focus is not only chemical, it is personal. You must understand something fundamental about yourself. Your inability to focus does not mean you lack potential. It means you have been living in a world that exploits your biology instead of supporting it. Every distraction you have fallen into, every moment you felt disconnected, every task you avoided, every project you delayed, none of these make you weak. They make you human. They reflect a nervous system that is overwhelmed, not a person who is incapable. You have not failed to focus. You have not even tried with the right tools. Once you begin working with your biology instead of against it, everything changes. Tasks feel lighter. Thoughts feel clearer. Starting becomes easier. Finishing becomes inevitable. Your brain stops fighting you and begins supporting you. And this brings us to the turning point of the entire process. The moment where everything about your understanding of focus shifts, because focus is not something you do. Focus is something your brain becomes. Your brain enters a state of focus when 3 conditions align: increased adrenaline to create engagement, concentrated acetylcholine to create precision, and steady dopamine to create motivation. When these 3 chemicals line up, you enter the zone. The deep, immersive state, where work feels effortless and time dissolves. This state is the doorway to transformation, and understanding how to enter it gives you power over your mind. But there is something even more important you must know. Deep focus is not only a mental state, it is a signal to your brain that what you are doing matters. And when your brain believes something matters, it begins to change itself around that activity. This is the secret most people never learn. Focus is the trigger for becoming someone new, and the path to deep focus begins in a place most people never look. It begins in your body, because the truth is this: your mind cannot enter a state your body is not prepared for. Your brain follows physiological signals, and the fastest way to rewire your focus is to master the physical cues that control your internal state. And once you understand these cues, you will realize something extraordinary. You are not at the mercy of your distractions. You're at the edge of transformation, and the next step reveals exactly how to cross that edge. Your body sends constant signals to your brain about whether it is safe to focus or whether it needs to stay alert for threats. These signals come from your breath, your posture, your heart rate, and the way you move your eyes. If your breath is shallow, your posture is tense, or your eyes jump rapidly from one point to another, your brain interprets this as stress. and a stressed brain cannot focus deeply. But when your breath slows, your body becomes still, and your eyes fix on a single point, your brain receives a very different message. It begins shifting into a state of internal stability, reducing noise, increasing clarity, and preparing your chemistry for deep concentration. This is why your physical state is the foundation of your mental state. A calm body creates a focused mind. A chaotic body creates a distracted mind. Your biology does not separate the two. But there is something even more powerful happening beneath the surface. When your body enters a stable state and your brain begins to focus, a fourth system comes online. Your sense of meaning. Meaning is not abstract. It is a neurochemical signal that tells your brain that what you are doing is important. And when your brain believes something is important, it changes the chemistry of focus. Adrenaline rises in a controlled way. Acetylcholine intensifies. Dopamine becomes steady and purposeful. Meaning amplifies focus. And focus amplifies meaning. This is why you can lose hours working on something you truly care about, but struggle for minutes on something that feels empty. Your brain does not focus on what you tell it to focus on. It focuses on what it believes matters. And your beliefs about what matters come from repeated emotional signals, not from logic. If you want deep focus, you must give your brain a reason. Not a reason in words, but a reason in feelings. And that reason is simple. Progress. Every small step you take, every tiny improvement, every moment of clarity is a signal to your brain that what you are doing matters. This signal triggers dopamine in a way that supports sustained attention. This is the biological truth behind discipline. You don't need to feel motivated. You need to feel the smallest sign of progress. Progress is the language your brain understands. Progress is the fuel of focus. And this brings us to the heart of the transformation. Your ability to focus is built on 3 levels: the chemical level, the behavioral level, and the identity level. When these 3 levels align, your brain becomes a place where deep focus is natural. When they don't align, your brain becomes a place where focus feels impossible. These 3 levels are the map to rewiring your mind. The first level is chemical. Your brain cannot focus without the proper balance of adrenaline, acetylcholine. You create this balance by reducing distractions, narrowing your visual field, stabilizing your breath, avoiding much, and allowing the first wave of resistance to pass without escaping. These small actions adjust your chemistry. They create the internal landscape where deep focus can happen. Chemistry is the foundation. The second level is behavioral. Your brain decides what to focus on based on patterns. If you regularly switch tasks, your brain learns to expect switching. If you constantly check your phone, your brain learns to expect novelty. If you avoid difficulty, your brain learns to avoid effort. But if you regularly stay with a task, even for short periods, your brain begins to expect focus. Behavior trains chemistry. Behavior teaches your brain what to value. And the behaviors that matter most are the ones you repeat, not the ones you force. Even 2 minutes of uninterrupted effort can begin reshaping your neural patterns. Behavior is the pathway. The third level is identity. This is the deepest level and the most misunderstood. Your identity is not the story you tell yourself. Your identity is the prediction your brain makes about who you are based on your past actions. If your past is filled with distraction, your brain assumes you are someone who gets distracted. If your past is filled with unfinished tasks, your brain assumes you are someone who quits. But when you begin building new patterns, even tiny ones, your brain updates its predictions. It begins to believe you are capable of focus. It begins to believe you are consistent. It begins to believe you are someone who acts, and when your brain believes this, your chemistry changes accordingly. Identity is the transformation. This is why so many people fail to change. They try to force new behaviors while keeping an old identity. They try to focus like someone they don't yet believe they are. But when your identity shifts, effort becomes natural. Focus becomes familiar. Distraction becomes uncomfortable. This is the biological truth behind personal growth. Your brain follows your identity, and your identity follows your actions. The more often you enter a state of focus, even briefly, the more your brain begins to prefer it. Focus becomes rewarding. Distraction becomes draining. You begin to crave depth instead of noise. This is the moment when you realize something profound. Your attention is not something you control. It is something you train. And once it is trained, it becomes effortless. But the most extraordinary part of this entire journey is what happens next. When your brain becomes capable of deep focus, you unlock the mechanism that allows you to reshape your life. Because focus is the gateway to neuroplasticity is the gateway to becoming someone new. Your brain changes when you pay attention. Your brain strengthens what you work on. Your brain rewires itself around the things you commit to. Deep focus is not just a tool, it is a signal to your nervous system that you are ready to evolve. And the moment your brain senses this signal, it begins transforming you from the inside out. Every skill you build, every habit you adopt, every piece of knowledge you absorb, every behavior you repeat, they all rely on your ability to focus. Without focus, change cannot happen. With focus, change becomes inevitable. This means something powerful. The life you want depends on your ability to enter the state of deep focus. Not once, not occasionally, consistently. And now you understand the chemical, behavioral, and identity mechanisms behind it. You have the blueprint, you have the tools, you have the science, and most importantly, you have the potential. Your struggle with focus has never been a sign of weakness. It has always been a sign of misalignment between your chemistry, your behavior, and your identity. But misalignment can be corrected. Chemistry can be shaped. Behavior can be trained. Identity can be rebuilt. And when these three align, your focus becomes unstoppable. Imagine a version of yourself who can sit with a task and become immersed in it. Imagine a mind that stays clear even when the world is loud. Imagine being able to control your attention instead of being controlled by it. Imagine waking up with a brain that feels capable, calm, and ready. This version of you is not a fantasy. It is a biological possibility, and it begins with one decision. The decision to train your focus instead of fighting it. Your brain is waiting for direction. It follows the signals you give it. If you feed it chaos, it becomes chaotic. If you feed it depth, it becomes deep. If you feed it distraction, it becomes scattered. If you feed it focus, it becomes powerful. You are not at the mercy of your attention. You are at the beginning of mastery. And now, you stand at a threshold. On one side is the life shaped by distraction, the unfinished tasks, the foggy thoughts, the constant overwhelm. On the other side is the life shaped by deep focus, the clarity, the progress, the confidence, the transformation. The bridge between the two is not talent. It is not discipline. It is not motivation. The bridge is understanding, and now you understand the biology of focus. You understand the chemistry, the behavior, the identity. You understand the path. All that remains is to walk it. If this guide helped you see your mind more clearly, stay with us. This channel exists to help you understand the hidden mechanisms that shape your thoughts, your emotions, and your behavior. Every week, we explore a deeper layer of your brain so you can navigate your life with more clarity, more intention, and more strength. And if you feel like sharing, I would truly like to hear your story. Tell us in the comments where you struggle to focus, what part of your life feels scattered, or what you hope to transform. Someone else reading your words may feel understood for the first time. Thank you for being here. This journey into your mind is just beginning. If you want to walk this path with us, follow the channel and activate the notifications so you don't miss the next step in your own transformation. Let's keep going. Together, into the universe, inside your brain.